J2 at Joint Force Headquarters, Department of Defense Information Network. And I'd like to talk to you today about predictive intelligence and what we've been doing thus far in that regard. About 20 years ago, I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I was a brigade intelligence officer for then Colonel Lloyd Austin, who later had become a four-star. But he'd give me some important piece of advice about being an intelligence officer. He said, Casey, you gotta tell me what the threat's going to do. Tell me what the enemy's going to do so that we can actually plan against it and that sort of business. And if they change their course of action, we can adjust as necessary. So I took that to heart. That's what I've kind of lived by my entire career. So it's very tough to come to the cyber domain where you find out there's not a lot of predictive intelligence out there. We've got to kind of make our way forward here with doctrine and with the methodology we use, as well as some more work on automation as well. It seems to me that we've gotten away from what we've done in the land domain or the air domain or the sea domain. And what I'm talking about there is that normally your operational reporting kind of comprises 80% of your intelligence. You get the reporting from the operational units that are out there, you plot them on the map, you start to get a picture of what the threat looks like, you enrich it with intelligence, and you get a pretty good idea then, a good assessment of what the threat's going to do. Not the same in cyber. We tend to bin them two different categories, one intel, one ops. We tend not to put them together. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about our efforts to go forward with using the Department of Defense Information Network as a sensor to detect threat activity and then go ahead and enrich it with intelligence. In my daily position, I do a number of things in the J2, things like analysis, production, collection management, planning, and counterintelligence to give you some kind of idea what we do every day. Ooh, my slide died. Hey, sir, is the slide dead? Computer crash. Wow, okay. Isn't that right? It's probably a cyber attack for all I know. But anyway, I'll start to get into this without the computer for the time being. But, I guess the question is, why do we come to the DCO Symposium every year? I mean, every year we do this. We talk a lot about the same issues. But from a military perspective, we come here to kind of share our successes and put some challenges on our industry partners to solve some problems, right? So industry perspective, I imagine you come here to kind of show what you've been working on, show the great products you've got around the room here, and then also get an opportunity to look at places you can invest your IRAD, right, your internal R&D funding. You want something, obviously, that the government is interested in and not just building things for the sake of building things. So that's where we want to help you today, is give you a few ideas about what we do with IRAD as well and some of the shortfalls we have. I think one of the big focuses we have now from a predictive intelligence standpoint is to stop reporting the news and start reporting intelligence, and that's what we're going to talk about. I think there's an opportunity for our industry partners to become heroes in cyber if you can deliver a couple of things, and I'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. But one is going to be better behavioral analytics, and second is visualization. And we'll get into that a little later, but the two basic things up front that we're looking for to get after. The cyber domain is getting more complex every day. I see the intelligence reporting on a regular basis. And the obfuscation techniques used by our threat are becoming much more sophisticated. Machine learning, artificial intelligence is giving them additional capabilities. And that complex infrastructure that they're setting up overseas for a number of their operations against us are, again, becoming more sophisticated over time. So I'm going to share a few things about what we're doing now. How are we doing? All right, good. All right, so we're coming up in a second here. Right, yes. Okay, terrific. Okay. So, state of cyber intelligence. The challenges have not changed a whole lot, right? The nation states all have much different interests than the rest of our threats that we have out there. Obviously, nation states interested in things like exfiltration of intellectual property, things like espionage, regional threats to their regional foes. Hacktivists, not a big threat to the DODIN, right? But what they tend to do is go after our public-facing pages, try to deface them, things of that nature. Not so much of a threat to us directly, but certainly is an issue. Terrorists, their focus is more on recruiting and on sharing tactics, techniques, and procedures, things of that nature. Not always a direct threat to the DODIN, but we do keep track of it. And then the cyber criminals. I mean, the bottom line is nobody in the Department of Defense is going to pay anybody money to not take to unlock our data and that kind of thing. But we do have concerns about them in the sense that, in an ancillary way, that, for example, if they go after a utility company, okay, so we depend on power, obviously, in the Department of Defense Information Network to provide our capabilities. So definitely a concern in there. And I'd like to emphasize that our authorities in the J2 and the J3 that we have here end at the outer boundary of the Department of Defense Information Network. Okay, so people say, what are you doing about the cyber criminals? Well, nothing. That's not my job. That's not what we do. We don't have the authorities to do things like that. That thing is in the Department of Homeland Security, right? DHS. Different authorities, different kinds of things. Now, they come on the DODIN, obviously we can do a lot of things, but our authorities end there. And there's always the insider threats as well, the kind of the DODIN things that go on. But really about 90% of the data that we collect is just FOUO, right, for official use only, unclassified data. And there's a tendency, I think, in the community to overclassify data with our indicators of compromise. So in many cases, things will be collected as unclassified. It goes up to get enriched with intelligence. It comes back down, top secret or secret and things like that. Makes the job of our cybersecurity service providers very difficult because they've got to actually go out and implement those actions, those blocking actions on the DODIN. Those are the kind of war fighters that are on the ground making things happen. So that's a huge issue, and it always has been. So we spend a lot of time doing the, sort of the downgrading of information. And there's some cross-domain solutions out there and that kind of thing. I understand that. Some of you are working on cross-domain solutions, but pushing it back down, much, much more complicated than bringing it up by far. I think that if you look at the challenges we have there on the left, it talks about multiple repositories. There are a lot of different data lakes being constructed in the Department of Defense. Okay, Army's got one, Cybercom's got one, DISA's got one, all these things, and of course the goal is that eventually we sort of connect all those lakes together with some little streams, so we're all pulling out of the same pond, we're all fishing from the same pond, able to aggregate all that data and do the trending analysis on it. But we're just not there yet. We've done a lot of kind of one-off repositories, so eventually we'll get there. Classification levels I talked about, the volume of unanalyzed data is massive. I mean, if you look at just email alone coming into the Department of Defense Information Network, it's on the order of 38 to 40 million a day. Out of those, 82% are blocked, but it still leaves us millions that we have to go through and try and analyze and find out if there's threats inside of those emails. So that's a challenge. That's a huge challenge. So getting after that with automation is definitely the way we want to go. We're not going to people our way out of this problem by saying, okay, we'll go from a 10 analyst to 100 analysts. Not going to make a difference. We talk about millions of different potential things coming in. This ability to correlate across the sources. Those sources I'm talking about there are those 5 things, the commercial threat data, the information reporting, the battlefield information, that ability to correlate across those. Very complex because often there are different classification levels, requires those cross-domain solutions, and in some cases we just simply have not set things up in such a way that we can easily correlate across things. And that's why you get that piece about pivoting across multiple platforms. Okay, so just a simple thing like the Joint Incident Management System. We had that around for about 8 years. We use that to record indicators of compromise, so that everybody can historically dig into it and find out what's going on with threats on the DODIN. But the problem is it's set up on CyberNet, the classified internet. So those poor people that are in the cyber security service providers, they got to collect things on the unclassified internet, turn around to CyberNet, and fat finger it in there to turn a report in. So not helpful. It's not automated in such a way that you can just pull the data over easily. So those are the challenges, and it has some significant impacts as well. If you look at, I talked about how intensive the labor is, and we can't people our way out of that. That is absolutely true. We're looking at more automated solutions now, and that's where industry really comes in, that we need your help to help sift through all that data and get down to find that needle that's inside of a stack of needles, as hard as that is. The redundancy is we have not found a way to federate yet all the cyber defense, right, to federate it. So in many cases, we're all sort of writing on the same set of threats. So it'd be nice if I wrote an article about threats, and it'd be a different article written by Cybercom about threats, and a different article by Army about threats. But in many cases, we're all kind of writing about the same ones. So at some point, we want to be able to federate that. And this piece about situational awareness, I can tell you that is the biggest frustration across the board when you go to the combatant commanders, CENTCOM, EUCOM, all those big combatant commanders. What they always want is to go into their Joint Operations Center and look on the wall and say, there's a cyber situation. In 30 seconds, I understand what it is. But we're nowhere near that yet. Okay, we haven't got any good solutions. We're looking for some outside-the-box thinking to get after situational awareness. Very complex problem, but really all we want to do is be able to see what the friendly forces are, what the top 5 or 6 threats are, and find some way of depicting them. And maybe geographically is not the best way to do it, because geographics don't matter very much in cyber, right? If you're the PACOM commander, do you have threats from Eastern Europe? Sure you do. Sure you do, absolutely. You can't be just concerned about the things that are in your region. So maybe maps is not the way to go after the situational awareness. Maybe you use network sort of diagrams, but we got to find a way to get after that problem. So if you can solve that, you're a hero. The piece about reactive versus proactive, that's huge. So we get a lot of solutions from industry and from what we already have in place with, hey, we're going to tell you when that threat's going to hit your tier 1 boundary. Well, that's nice, but we want to know what's going to hit us in a week, not what's hitting us in this second, right? So that's the real challenge we have, is getting after that. And then this understanding the adversary, that situational awareness thing where we have a full understanding of what the adversary is doing out there in cyberspace. Let me see if I can get this to work. Oh, good, okay. So what this kind of shows you is where we are versus where we've been. So the piece about hindsight there, you see on the left side of that little graph, and all that graph is really showing you is that the value gained is directly proportional to the amount of work you put into it, as you'd expect. But that piece about hindsight is where we've been in the past, so where we dutifully took indicators of compromise, we recorded them, and said, yes, there it is. Let's go back and historically look at it, put the blocking actions in, that kind of business. So that's where we've been in the past. The part in the middle is where we are right now. We're actually taking data and understanding why the threat might have done that. Right? So it's not easy to do, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about how we get after that in a few minutes. But that's where we are now. Foresight is where we want to get in the future. What is actually going to happen next, tomorrow, next week, next year, that kind of thing. What indicators are out there? Indicators and warning is all about what the intelligence community is supposed to be doing. And the challenge is that unlike the other domains, indicators are not so obvious. So, for example, if you're in the land domain and you're defending, a certain piece of terrain, you put your scouts out. The scouts can then have certain indicators they're looking for, like threat reconnaissance vehicles and that kind of thing, and they get an idea which direction that the bad guys are coming from. Not so obvious with cyber, and be able to sort of label these threats and be able to clearly identify when the threats are coming and what direction they're coming from and when they're coming and why they're coming. But that's where we got to get to in the future there. And I think one of the things I've noticed is that on the commercial side there is some tremendous analytical skill. We get some great products out of a number of different vendors. that really help us enrich the intelligence that we're gathering on the Department of Defense Information Network, the sensor data that we get, and a lot of really skilled people there. So what we're working on now is a way in which we can use our sensor data and enrich that with commercial intelligence. So, for example, we want to analyze things like what scans are the threats doing for particular vulnerabilities against us? What internet access point is getting scanned harder than everything else, right? What particular organizations in Department of Defense are being scanned or probed much more so than other ones. It gives us some idea of where to look, where the threat is going to go. Then we're able to take that and start to do the analysis and get some idea where to start by pulling the trending data. And so you can get the trends across the board, find out where there's a spike in the trends, and start analyzing a little spike and why it's there. But it's a whole new process that hasn't been done before in defensive cyber. In the past, it's always been about health of the network, make sure the green light's on, that kind of thing. But now it's more about actually doing the cyber warfare, really fighting the defensive battle. Yeah, so this talks a little bit about the way ahead. And I think people get too caught up in attribution. Okay, attribution is nice. I love attribution. But if it's not timely, if I don't know about who did it right now, it doesn't really matter to me. What I'm concerned about is if I'm getting punched in the mouth, I want to stop getting punched in the mouth. Right? So and do the blocking actions, take it, and start doing the analysis to determine what the threat is doing next. So we tend to focus on more generic threats across the board. But I think the problem with all this is that the methodology is a little bit too manual still and not automated enough, and that's why it talks about in the bottom of the slide there the need for automated capabilities so we can handle the amount of volume coming in to the DODIN. All right, so a little bit about trending, and to do trending right, we got to be able to aggregate data. So Army has great sensors in their network, Navy's got sensors in their network, Air Force does. Our challenge now is to be able to aggregate all that up to the sensor data that we're collecting at the DODIN level, at the Tier 1 end level, and be able to have a full database so we can do the trending more accurately. Right now, we just kind of look at the Tier 1 DISA level data that we're collecting with the DISA sensors, which is okay. It's a start, but we want to get to the point where we're collecting all the data, and it's got to be more of a pull system than a push system. So right now we're kind of relying on putting, in other words, units do red reporting, we call it. They send in things to us that are of significance on their networks, and we analyze those. But in the future, we want to be able to actually just do a pull, reach down, pull it all up, and analyze it, right? Rather than having this manual sort of send me a report. Let me go back and look and see if it's important. I think there's too much of a focus on finding anomalies too. I mean, finding anomalies is great. We certainly that's a start point. But when people say I've got this capability to go and find an anomaly, there's hundreds of them every day. Okay, so we need to get down to the 5 or 6 anomalies that are out there that we can really handle analytically. So I'm not always a big fan of just taking a straight anomaly approach to detecting threat data on the DODIN. Okay, so there's all the the different tiers that we have in the system, right? So the tier 0 is the internet service provider, right, where that connects to the internet. The tier 1 is the outer boundary of DISA. They set up their sensors out there. Web content filter, the EMSG, that's the enterprise email message gateway, that kind of thing. All of that at the tier 1. Tier 2 is where you got the services, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and then of course we have a massive amount of different organizations. So services are the easy part. The hard part is the agencies and field activities, particularly the small ones, that don't have large cyber capabilities and don't have their own intelligence capabilities. So they really depend upon us to deliver those to us. The POW MIA accountability agency is a great organization, but they just don't have any intelligence people assigned. So they really do depend on us for that. Then of course down at the bottom you got the the user, right? And those basic user cybersecurity elements that are on every single desktop that's out there. But our strategy then is to leverage those sensors at the different levels that we have there. And so the primary one is obviously the tier 1. I talked about being able to integrate those tier 2 sensors. And then down at the user level as well, be able to pull in that HBSS data that's provided to us from McAfee and put that in for data analysis as well. And a big part of that is the big data platform that DISA is setting up. Right? So our tools in the future, we want to be able to plug those into the big data platform to do the analytics, and all in one place. So in order to get after that, we set up our own fusion division in the J3, in our operations section. I provide intelligence analysts to that organization, and what they do every day is they pull the anomalies out that we can identify that may be threats, and we go to work on it every single morning and analyze that data. Usually we can take 17, 18, 19 potential significant activities, get it down to 3 or 4 that we can handle, and put in the necessary blocking actions or whatever we're going to do about those indicators of compromise that are out there. But that's been a huge improvement we've had, is that fusion between the operations and the intelligence section. But like I said, it's all new in the defensive cyber arena. All new, brand new stuff. It's been around a long time for some of the other types of cyber that it's done, but very, very new for us. And a different focus, to have the warfighting kind of focus. In many cases, we're looking at, they're trying to answer the question of why. Is it just a matter of a misconfiguration of IP addresses? Is it a matter of some of the indicators we get from geopolitical global events that are going on? Is there something going on that would cause a threat actor to take actions against us on the DODIN? Things like that you look at for indications and warning from an intelligence perspective. And then, of course, you look and see what the intelligence community has available to us so we can enrich the sensor data with intelligence. Okay, so this is also a new concept. And that's defensive cyber operations collection management, right? All new, brand new concept. But the idea is that we are, in breaking this new ground, we kind of reflect the same thing we do in the land, sea, and air domains. Right? It's the same kind of thing. You analyze the threat, determine what gaps you have about what their intentions are, and then you array sensors or organizations against that to go out and collect against the threat. Same thing, but in this case, we're going to use the DISA sensors. We'll task the services for their sensors as well. We use our cyber protection teams, the CPTs, put them on orders to go and do some of the collection for us. But the idea is you give everybody this collection matrix to go out and collect against things. And it hasn't been done in the past, and it's very, very labor intensive. So it's a work in progress to build the organization up to the point that we can get a daily product out of them and keep updating it, kind of the same way we do with collections that you do in a COCOM and things like that. But it's been a challenge, but it's already paying off. And then of course there's things like that we cannot collect because they're outside the DODIN authorities that we have. So we'll have to nominate them to DHS to collect. We'll have to nominate things to NSA to collect things like that. So there's also an authorities question that comes into this. Okay, so this is where we're going right now to try and get after the fusion of our commercial threat data. We're starting with commercial threat data, and that's the Integrated Cyber Intelligence Platform. We've been coding it since January. And it was a great initiative by the DoD CIO. They went out and got the funding for it from the Rapid Innovation Fund, which is a great thing. Gives you a very short period of performance, 9 months to deliver a prototype. So I love the fact that it kind of pushes JSIDs off to the side. The long-term sort of program of record approach, where if I ask for the capability now, I'll get money in about 2 years to start developing it. This is like right away the money starts, which is a great thing. But anyway, the Integrated Cyber Intelligence Platform is initially using that commercial data and behavioral analytics. So advanced behavioral analytics that are going to take us from millions of potential events a day to 5 or 6 that we can really handle. And it also grades the potential threat coming in. So it'll say, from 1 to 1,000, this one is 96% chance having a threat inside of it. This one has an 88% chance, that kind of thing. So it actually, sort of gives you that prioritization for your analysts to go after and look after these different anomalies that come in. So we're looking forward to this capability, and we'll be getting a demo on it this summer. And if it works, we'll take it into phase 2, which will be going after the integration of all that DISA sensor data that we have available on the big data platform. So we'll actually integrate this into the big data platform as a tool, and it'll do that fusion between commercial data and the government data to get us a more complete picture. And phase 3 is where we really go after the tough things with the top secret and the secret networks and the data that's being collected there, and fuse the whole thing together. So it'll be pretty powerful when we get this done. And one of the big things about it too is that it's got it's going to have a dashboard that can be exported to other organizations and filtered. So if you're in Army cyber, you can get the dashboard set up in your organization, filter it just for Army events, and use it that way. If you're in the POW MIA, accountability agency, you can just set things up to filter for your events, and pull trends off of it and that kind of business. So we are very, very excited about it. It's come a long way in a short time. And we're looking forward, though, to actually integrating all that web content filter and some of the other data that's coming off of the Tier 1 and the Tier 0 in the future here. Okay. All right, so this is what I talked about before with that cyber visualization. And, the Deputy Director of Cybercom 2 weeks ago, we had the cyber conference. We just kind of threw down the gauntlet and said, we got to fix this. I need visualization of the cyber domain. We're not getting after it. So everybody's taking that challenge very seriously. We got, like I said, it's got to depict the cyber mission forces. It's got to depict the threat activity, and be able to highlight for the commander what the 5 or 6 things are that are of most concern. Okay, so what I've seen in the past with attempts at visualization is, let me put this 2,000 dots on a map for you. Well, that's not helpful. Okay, I need to actually focus in on what we really are threatened by, most likely in this visualization process. So that's definitely an opportunity for our industry partners to fix a problem that we have. And he's put the capabilities development group on that at Cybercom to start going after this and really lay out the requirements for it. To find a solution. We tried some other things with visualization. We tried to use some of the legacy systems like the Global Command and Control System, GEEX, right? So in this case, the joint version, GEEX-J, which was a great system for tracking, formations moving across the land or across the sea or that kind of thing. Not so helpful with cyber. We can plot the cyber mission forces on there pretty easily, but the threat piece is really hard. Right, because it's based on that modified integrated database, the MIDB, where you build threat data. But we can't sit there and build, 10,000 cyber files a day to put and feed into the system. It doesn't work. So maybe there's an automated way of doing it. I don't know. But I just ask you to think outside the box about a way to get after this problem. But it's been tough trying to make GEEX-J work for us. But maybe it'll happen in the future. And it's expensive because GEEX-J has a lot of personnel requirements as well to pay all those salaries. And it's kind of the same thing here, is the idea that the visualization's got to be exportable, to other organizations. It can't just be in the combatant command joint operations centers. It's got to be such that we can pull it up in the subordinate organizations and easily filter it for the data that would be of interest to us in those different units. And I guess the other challenge we got from the boss was about the coalition. How can we set it up in such a way that our partners in the UK or Canada or Australia, that kind of thing, can actually go ahead and use that data and just fight their own cyber wars. So it's going to be a challenge as well to get through all those authorizations to get that done. But it's a great idea. Okay. All right, so that's the conclusion of the predictive intelligence briefing. Can I entertain any questions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so that's Cybrex Defense Corporation in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Hi, Christopher Carter. Interested in what you see. You talk about the 5 or 6, right? And it's so dynamic that those 5 or 6 at 10 o'clock in the morning and 11 o'clock in the morning might be different. So there's kind of that flow through the life cycle of what's hot right now. This one's assigned, a new one comes into the top 5. So call it the top 5. As they get assigned out and somebody's working it, now you need the new ones, so you kind of have like a dealer of issues coming in and prioritizing. That sounds like what you're looking for, but across the domain so that the classification gets somewhat anonymized so that you can hand those down all the way out to the tier 0.
Right. So clearly we had to think through that. You're right, and what we did was we set up a information cutoff at 0600 every day. So whatever came in between the last 24 hours, that's what we're going to analyze. And so something comes at 1100, we'll go into the next day's cycle of analysis. But that's a great point. You're constantly chasing after it. In some cases, we don't get things resolved that day, and it takes days and days and days, and it keeps just building up. But that's the challenge of it, and that's why we need automated analytics so much. Yeah, it's a great point.
Hi, I'm the owner of a small business which may have a solution for some of this, because we do automated risk management and visualization. That's a big part of what we do. To deal with a problem like this can get into some pretty deep algorithmic complexities,
Yes.
Deep mathematical concepts of the pattern recognition. Now, we are currently engaging with DISA's small business group. They're not specialists. Now, how would you recommend that we connect the dots to get our solutions in front of you folks that can recognize actually what we're doing? Do you have any recommendations for how to engage to bring our products forward?
I'm happy to engage about it, and I think ultimately it's going to end up going to the capabilities development group at Cybercom, because they can actually write the checks. Right. I got no money, but they actually have the funding set up in such a way that we can set up contracts and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But ultimately go to them.
All right.
But probably we'd be a start point, I think, so we can make recommendations to them and champion whatever awesome capability you have.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Other questions?
Sir, thank you. You identified the 6 a.m. cutoff. So as assignments happen, how are the remediations going to flow? They're not going to all just sit there static all day, I suspect.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a great point. So it's a separate process. So in many cases, of course, the remediations are automated. Depending on which sense we're talking about. So it may have an automated capability, but from a network perspective, those still go out when we get the detections. So every day at 1700 we publish a cyber tasking order, okay, and that has those remediations listed in there. And we may not have got around to the analysis yet of why it happened and that kind of thing, but we would at least be able to tell the cybersecurity providers to take action against it. Okay. Other questions? Okay, well, I'd like to thank AFCEA for giving us the opportunity to speak to you today, and glad to talk to any of you about the capabilities development we're looking for at JFHQ-DODIN. Thank you.